So as they said, my name is Tom Nall with Avanade. If you aren't familiar with Avanade, we're a joint venture between Microsoft and Accenture. We're a solutions consultancy delivery company, so I appreciate the time to be here. So the road to AI transformation, the panel that was up here kind of ended on the perfect note, right? All the questions about where are you using AI. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because I was actually at Microsoft last week, met with some of their manufacturing and IT leaders, and I think there's a disconnect, right? I think there's a disconnect between where the technology providers say we are with AI and where manufacturers are really adopting and using AI, right? And I'll show you what I mean by that on this next slide. And again, I think that the panel illustrated that perfectly, right? If you talk to Microsoft or AWS or Google or any of the big technology providers, what they'll tell you is we're using agentic AI, we're using artificial general intelligence. We've got AI systems out there that are completely capable of running systems and plants by themselves, right? If you talk to manufacturers, you hear a lot about like what you heard from the panel. We're experimenting with it a little bit. We're experimenting with a little bit more. We're scaling it, but these stats tell us that only about 65% of manufacturers are actually really even experimenting with AI, and 70% that are not taking that to scale, meaning they're not driving significant business impact from the AI programs that they have in place. But the good news is we can help you change that, right? I mean, we're absolutely at a turning point in what AI can do to help manufacturers leverage the data that they have. If we think about manufacturing data, since we have been in mass production and in the industrial world, manufacturers have been trying to gather and use data to drive business improvement. Nothing's new, right? You used to walk around with clipboards. If you're old like me, you remember dot matrix printers that pumped out these massive reports, and you walk around with shop packets this big. We eventually got to a point where we had, we had green screen dumb terminals where we could at least enter information that we were gathering on the shop floor faster. You heard them talk about AI, right? AI has been around for a long time too. I think there were 2 or 3 folks up here who talked about vision systems for quality improvement, vision systems for anomaly detections, vision systems for safety. That's AI. That's been around for 15 or 20 years, right? But where we are now is in a new world with generative AI, and this took off about 2 years ago. ChatGPT is really what's launched us here. And this is a quote from Bill Gates at Microsoft, but I truly believe we are at a point in time right now where we are just starting, where how every single person in every single organization engages with technology and data to do their jobs better. I'm going to show you what I mean by that, right? So again, if we step back to the developments in AI recently, it started with ChatGPT, right? So natural engagement with your data. What we're really talking about here is asking questions of the data on my shop floor, asking questions of the data in my ERP systems, having a conversation with my data, and my data having the ability to talk back. But it all starts with the natural language processing models that we're talking about. And here's an example of something we're working on with several of our customers
tariffs
right now.
Constantly shifting, staying on top of their financial impact is key. Meet Alex, a procurement manager navigating today's complex global supply chain. With Navigator, Alex gets notified when tariffs change, updates classifications in seconds, and sees how purchase orders are affected by suppliers. He can even loop in sales to make sure customers get accurate pricing fast. All of this so the business can act quickly and avoid revenue erosion. Today, Alex receives a proactive alert from Navigator. Several SKUs have been hit by recent tariff changes. He asks Navigator to show affected items, current tariff codes, and possible alternatives. Since supplier tariff data is often inaccurate, this helps him quickly verify supplier codes and correct any errors in the system. Navigator provides a detailed list, current HTS codes, potential alternatives, and the difference in tariff rates. Alex notices that some classifications need to be updated. He updates 2 SKUs, SK4789 and SK5293, to their alternative HTS codes right from the chat. Navigator confirms the ERP update and offers to dig deeper. Alex now wants to see the annual purchase order impact for all tariffed items. Navigator crunches the numbers, 28 active SKUs, $418,000 in total impact. It even highlights the top 10 items driving most of the cost for Alex to review in case other vendors could be used to reduce the cost impact of new tariffs. Alex asks for the full dataset and receives it instantly as a CSV for further analysis. This helps him begin reducing tariff impact by exploring alternative suppliers or distribution options, and Navigator automates that first step, enabling proactive sourcing decisions.
So if we stop for a second and think about what Alex just did, right? He got an alert that SKUs had changed and had a financial impact on his company. He went and found out what those SKUs were. He updated SKUs in his ERP system. He asked for a report to proactively be sent to his inbox so he could dig further into the information. He never once had to go into an ERP system. He never once had to go out to a governmental system that keeps the records of the tariff changes. He never once had to go to his IT department and say, write me this report and send it to me, or download things to Excel to manipulate it. All he did was talk to a system. All he did was ask that system everyday questions, and it was able to go behind the scenes and give him the information that he needs to do his job. So when I say that every single person on this planet and every single role in every company has the ability to change how they interact with data to do their jobs, that's just a quick example of what I'm talking about. So I'm going to talk about how do we meet our clients where they are. How do we work with our manufacturers? If you haven't started yet, we can talk a little bit about how to get started. If you have started but aren't scaling and driving that value, that business impact to your company, where do you go from here? So as I go through the session today, though, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some building blocks, some terms that you'll hear from me. The first is generative AI, right? So generative AI is Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini. There's lots of natural language tools out there that you use to ask a system for information. So it's that natural language engagement where you're asking for a response from whatever the natural language system that you're using. The agent is a piece of software that behind the scenes is doing things on its own. So in the example that we used with Alex, there was an agent running to look and see if there were any tariff changes that impacted their specific information, their specific SKUs, right? That's an agent. Now, you'll also hear autonomous AI, autonomous agentic AI, artificial general intelligence, and these are multiple agents working together that can go do things without a human in the loop. Very, very simple example is I've got 1,000 invoices that I need to process, right? So an agent's going to go and look and say, does the invoice match the PO, match the receipt? If that three-way match is good, go ahead and send an ACH payment. If it's not, go ahead and notify this person that there's a discrepancy. So now I'm bringing the person in the loop. But 80% of what I needed to do, an agent was doing behind the scenes. So those are some of the terms that you might hear from me. And again, just wanted to make sure that everybody knows where I'm coming from when I use that terminology. So the next kind of couple things we're going to talk about is getting started and getting right? So again, if we look at the statistics, and that was, by the way, from a study from Accenture about 6 months ago, so not that long ago, 35% of manufacturers said, we really haven't even gotten started with AI, generative AI, or certainly not agentic AI. 70% plus that have started say we're not scaling it, right? So we're going to talk about how can you get started if you haven't, and then how can you be successful once you get started or if you already have started. So the first, there's kind of two critical things to getting started, right? First is your people. You have to, we heard a ton about change management, engaging people, making sure users were on board, right? That's the first thing we absolutely have to do. I do want to just say, we don't see AI as a tool to replace people. We see AI as a tool to make every single person more effective, right? In order to make them more effective, you've got to build the foundation so they understand the tools that you're going to use. And then how do you get started? Find a use case, and we're going to talk about the best way you can find use cases and scale those use cases. I will say if there's anybody who's been through ERP programs or some of these big transformational programs that companies go to, this is not a big bang approach. You do not want to look at big bang doing everything for all all your departments and all your companies at once. This is absolutely a program where you start with pilots, you identify the right use cases that you can scale to your business, and we'll talk about how you can do that. So build the foundation. So here's what how I like to illustrate building the foundation, right? And I've said this a couple times, is that we are at a fundamental tipping point in how people are going to engage with technology, and that's AI, and it's natural language engagement with that AI. And if you think back 30 years ago, right, we were at another tipping point. And that was, we're going from green screen computing to graphical user interfaces. So I'm no longer going to punch stuff on a keyboard. What I'm going to do now is use a mouse to interact with the data, right? Nobody knew how to do it. You could walk into any company and say, here you go, this is what all your users are going to need in order to be able to use their data 2 years from now, right? Everybody's like, I have no idea how to use that. So Microsoft creates Minesweeper. Minesweeper taught people very simply that if I go over here and I click on the left, an action happens. I move the cursor over here and I click on the left, it brings up another menu. It was nothing but a tool to get people comfortable with how they were going to engage with that data in the future, right? That's what natural language processing is right now. That's what Copilot is. That's what ChatGPT is. It's that foundational level that gives every single user the comfort that they need to go now start having a conversation with their data, because it's not easy to do. It's hard to have a conversation with a machine, right? So we need to teach people how to do it. And I'll stick with this Minesweeper analogy a little bit because, you know, if we think about how prompts work, right? If I ask Minesweeper, hey, is there a bomb in the middle of this screen? The answer could be yes, the answer could be no, and they'd both be right. Right? If I look at a 4x4 set of squares in that screen, there's a couple bombs in there, right? But if I look at the dead center of that, it's a 2. There's no bomb that's going to blow me up if I click on it. So if I go instead and say, is there a bomb 6 rows down from the top and 6 columns in from the left? There is a bomb. That's prompting. That's learning how to ask the specific questions for the specific information that you need from your data. And the only way to do it is to get people started using that data, and that's with tools like Copilot. And the other thing I do mention here is, again, we're owned by Microsoft. Copilot is Microsoft's solution, and I'll walk into manufacturers and they say, it's $30 per user per month. Man, that's an expense I don't need to apply to my business right now. If I'd have walked in 30 years ago and said, buy this for each one of your users for $100 because it's how they're going to use their data in 2 years, you'd have thrown me out. There is no way a manufacturer would say, I'm spending $100 for every single one of my employees. If I'd have come back 2 years later, 28 years ago, they'd say 50% of my people that I didn't buy a mouse for don't know how to use data in the new world, right? So think about it that way. It's a simple investment. It's a cheap investment to get people comfortable with how they're going to interact with their data. Okay, so get people used to using the tools, the foundational tools that they're going to need to interact with their data. We're going to talk about a couple paths to identify use cases. No matter which path you go on, there are just a couple of truths that you want to keep in mind when you're looking at use cases for your business. First is there business value? Can I measure financially the impact that this is going to have on my company? It has to be there. That's how we're going to fund programs like this moving forward. Second is there alignment with strategic corporate objectives, right? If I look at Avanade, we have a 5-year plan. If I want to fund a program, I'm much better off being able to align the investment ask with supporting what we're trying to achieve strategically over the next 5 years. So a business value use case is good. A business value use case that helps me achieve my strategic objectives as a company is even better. Level of difficulty. So I might have a huge problem. If I solve it, tons of money pay back to my business. It supports strategic objectives. But you know what? It's so hard to do. It's going to be a year or 2 years out. Not a good use case. Again, we want quick wins, something we can start with and scale. I might get to that problem down the road, but if I try and tackle that first, I'm not going to get the buy-in from the business to scale and grow the program. Organizational readiness. We'll talk about this one more down the road, but Again, we're not looking at big bang. So when we look at the organization and where we want to start, there are going to be certain departments or users or groups of users that are more ready to accept this kind of change than others. So that's where we're going to prioritize. And then finally, repeatability. What I mean here is, if I pick a single use case that only one team can use or one person or one department, I can't repeat that across my business. But if I can take this from a machine to 1,000 machines, from a line to 100 lines, from a factory to 10 factories, now I have repeatability. Or can I put a technology framework in place that I can go now and pick 100 different use cases to build on top of that framework? So either the use cases are repeatable across the business, or the technology foundation is repeatable with multiple use cases. So I talked about kind of two paths for how you can get to use cases. Both are right. It just depends on your organizational appetite. And what I'll say is we typically see the decision, enterprise companies go one way, small and medium, mid-market companies go a different way. I'll talk about both. So the first is work with your partner and ask them, where are companies like me already seeing success with this? What are the use cases that they've used? How can I go and repeat those use cases for my business? So I'm not going to come up with something completely from scratch. I want to know what others are doing. I want to learn from that. The benefit to this path is that there's a little bit less investment up front. You don't need to spend as much time ideating use cases, understand complexities of the shop floor. So you typically get to use case faster, right? The second is really I'm going to come with a blank sheet of paper. We're going to ideate our biggest problems. We're going to look at the technology in place. We're going to spend time on the plant floor. So there's a bigger investment up front to identify the use case, but I know darn well I'm getting one that's specific to my business, is going to have met all those criteria, and is going to drive significant payback for me. So, and again, both are right. So these slides are all going to be shared. So I'm not going to read through these. This is illustrative of a project where we just wrapped up. So we're working with a client. They said, what are the use cases that you're seeing in our industry? And we said, here's the top 8 use cases we're delivering in your industry right now. Right? And again, you'll get these and many more if you want them from me, by the way. And then they said, we've got 4 companies, right? So let's take those 8. Let's talk to each one of our companies, and let's see what each company says is the best one for them. And we narrowed it down to asset performance, how are my machines performing on the shop floor? And for them, it was changeover. Their changeover process is complex, it's paper-based. So those are the 2 that they landed on, right? So pretty quick way to get to the use case, but again, started with, hey, what are others doing? We'll figure out from that list what the most appropriate ones for me, and then we'll get started. As opposed to, as I mentioned, let's just start from scratch. We'll send experts on your shop floor, we'll talk to your people, we'll spend time in whiteboarding sessions. We use a process called design thinking, and we'll come up with use cases that are very bespoke to your business. Now, if you see the companies here, these are some of the outcomes that we've done with some recent customers. These use cases are specific to them, and the solutions are specific to them, but pretty enterprise-level companies, right? Mars, Bridgestone, Scheffler, these are all big enterprise organizations. They typically have a little bit more of an appetite for the whiteboard ideation approach. Mid-market, smaller companies typically say, we don't have the people and we don't have the time to start from scratch. So that's where we want your insights. So, one word of caution. I call this the willy-nilly approach. Again, on one of the early slides, 70% of clients who are working with AI aren't scaling it, so they're not successful, right? 100% of the time, when I go work with those companies, what I find out is that, Joe did a great use case over here, but only 3 people can use it, so I can't scale it. And by the way, we found a great use case at this business. And this company of ours also came up with the same use case, so it's scalable, but they're using this set of technology, and they're using this set of technology. So now I can't scale because I've got 2 different technologies that I go to manage, and it adds cost and complexity, security risk, et cetera. So have a standardized approach, and don't let people, I know it seems kind of counterintuitive because I said, Go let people play, right? Let them play with the generative AI tools, with the natural language engagement tools. When it comes to rolling out programs and use cases, don't let them play. Make sure that you standardize and centralize that. All right, so the last bullet on this slide, on this slide, I'll leave you with as well. So if you look at a scaling a generative AI program, there's some governance components that just have to be in place. And I think there's 12 or so that we recommend that all of our clients make sure are in there. We could honestly spend the entire day talking about those governance, those components. But there's a couple of things that are absolutely critical to getting started, to scaling, and I'll talk about those. And those are data readiness, scalability, and change management. So let's talk about data readiness. I call this the great data debate. And I was actually at CES, and I watched an executive panel. It was C-suite executives across, these are mostly kind of Fortune 50 companies. And one CEO said, I cannot start a scalable AI program until I've got a modern data platform. I want a standardized data estate with the same tools, same security around them. All the data is coming into there, and I want it to be as normalized and standardized as possible. And you know what? He's right. And then the chief marketing officer of another panelist said, Mr. CIO, I love what you're doing, but if I wait for you to get this utopian data estate in place, I'm so far behind my competitors, I may never catch up. So sorry, but I'm going forward without you. And you know what? He's right. So the answer is, should you be working towards a standard modern data platform that provides consistency in technology, security, et cetera? Absolutely. But can you start using the data that you have today to build use cases to get your AI journey started? Absolutely. There's two things I'll guarantee you. Number one is you will never have a perfect utopian data estate. We are collecting so much information, it's changing all the time. The technology is changing all the time. If you wait for perfection in your data, you're never going to get started. I will also guarantee you that every single company here has enough usable data that's accessible that we can find a use case to start with. So don't wait, get started, but absolutely work towards that standardized data platform. Scalability, I won't beat this horse to death, but it's just so important, right? Again, not in 100% of the cases, but awful close to them when we go to companies that aren't successfully scaling AI in their environments. It's because the use cases, they just didn't have the financial impact. They didn't help my senior leadership team understand how we're going to be successful as an organization if we invest in continuing to roll out this program, or they just didn't have the what's next. What's my next plant? What's my next asset? What's my next use case, et cetera? So I always do this one twice because it's applicable to the use case identification, but it's also critical to the success of scaling the program overall. Change management. It is always about your people. So I think I said earlier, we absolutely do not see AI as a tool to replace people. We see AI as a tool to make every single person better at what they do. But I'm not going to be disingenuous and say that there are not roles that won't go away because of AI. AI is just going to be better at some things than people are. So what our responsibility is to reskill those people so that they can find new roles in the organization that they can do better than AI. And if we think about technology, technology has replaced roles forever. 100 years ago, if I made my living by driving a wagon delivering goods, when the internal combustion engine came out, and now there were trucks that could do the same thing, my role changed. I'm now not a wagon delivery driver. I was upskilled to be a truck driver, and that's how I'm delivering the goods now. That's how we have to think about this, and that's how we have to engage our people, is make them comfortable that you might not be doing the same thing that you're doing today, but there is a place for you at the company, and you're going to be more efficient, and you're going to learn new skills, and you're going to grow, right? So that's just got to be absolutely foundational to the message of our people. The other is, ask. Don't tell your users what they need. I guarantee you, a dude working on the shop floor knows what he needs to do a heck of a lot better than I do by watching him for an hour, right? So ask them what they need, and then we'll develop the solutions that empower those employees to do their jobs better. But so often what I see is, hey, we ideated this great use case, and we're gonna put it in here to help you do X, Y, Z, and the user says, I don't need that, or it doesn't really help me, right? Because we never brought them into the process. So up front, always include your people in the process on identifying the use case and rolling out the solutions. And then again, always look at how we can reskill our employees. So this is what I mentioned. Again, we could spend all day here. So yes, you need to have, scalability in your program. You got to have change management as just a core component. But these are other things. What is my security in place? Am I using AI responsibly and ethically? Am I transparent in how I'm building my models? What is my data plan that we talked about? So all of these need to be, what is my continuous improvement, right? And one of the great things about AI is we build machine learning rules into them so that they keep getting better and better and better. So all of these are super key components to the governance of your program. And if you're doing these on your own, great. If you're not doing some of these, make sure you add them. If you're working with a partner, make sure that the partner's program includes all of these general guidelines around governance. So I'm gonna pause, or I'm gonna just wrap up here, but then we do have an interactive poll. So one of the things I didn't say is, at the very beginning, I showed you some questions, right, around what we heard from or Accenture heard from customers. The AI landscape changes monthly, right? How customers are using AI changes monthly. What you see as your barriers to entry or scale change monthly. So I ask everybody to stick with me. Instead of doing a Q&A, we're gonna have you go through the questions, and then again, just like the slides, the responses will be sent out to everybody. So you'll see, what are my peers doing? What are they thinking about? What's top of mind for them? But before we get there, I do just want to wrap up, right? So I have been, my entire career, 30 plus years, has been working with manufacturers to better use technology, right? To make their businesses better using technology. I have never seen or been as excited about a technology to revolutionize how we make things better, how we innovate in our business, the list goes on, than I am with artificial intelligence. It's just absolutely amazing what it can do for your business, right? And it's not that hard. I think it scares people, but it's not that hard. I guarantee you everybody in this room can do AI starting tomorrow. So that's kind of my conclusion. It's almost a little bit of a challenge, right? You're here with peers, you're here with industry leaders, you're here with technology leaders, there's the expo. So as you talk to each other, as you sit through the sessions, as you walk around the expo for learning from the companies that are here, keep in mind, what are 5 use cases I can take back? Is it for my whole company? Is it for my department? Doesn't matter. But everybody should walk out of here with at least an idea to take back to your business to say, hey, I think this might be a way we can use AI to make this role better, or this might be something we can replace a role with to make AI better, or to make it better, but let's now figure out how to reskill the person that might lose their role, right? So think about it while you're here. All right, so there's 6 questions, so almost perfect, so we'll have a minute per question. So you can scan this. It's not gonna pull up the questions yet until I go to the next screen, but this will kind of activate it, so. All right. So you should have all the questions now popped up on your phone. You can scan again, by the way. You don't have to scan every time, but if you scan the barcode again, or the QR code again, it'll give you the questions. All right. And I know all of the questions aren't, all the answers aren't popping up on the screen. I think we can probably kind of scroll around a little bit. Oh, they do come up on the phone too, okay. All right. So number one is always the is the last question not working, or are people just bored with the? I think this is the last, that was, no, one more. Okay. Well, right on time, so. Right on time before the buzzer goes off and I get to hook. Thank you so much. I mean, again, I'm around, more than welcome to come and ask questions, so thank you.